entire social media thing started for me relatively by accident. And that's because I come from an Arab household.
Yeah.
And not any Arab household, but a Palestinian household. And if you know anything about, or if you meet Palestinians, many of us, we don't have a home. Not sure if you heard about what's happening in Palestine, but essentially what happened since the Israeli occupation, my family, my grandparents, they migrated from Palestine and they went to Kuwait. And my grandparents were teachers, and Kuwait was building educational infrastructure at that time, and they needed teachers. So my grandparents went there, they settled there, and been there ever since. And my parents were like, well, we kind of want to be able to travel and have a life and have a place called home and not be expats their whole lives.
Yeah.
So they migrated to Canada.
Okay, so Kuwait was not giving you any sort of...
Kuwait doesn't give citizenships or anything like that. Like through marriage, there are some ways to get it. Mainly like females can get it, but males can't. It's a whole process because it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be a Kuwaiti citizen. I mean, if they offer the citizenship, I'd be like, hey, bro, you know where to find me. You got my number.
I mean, everybody's got it.
So I have an interesting, I hope not everybody has my number. So I had an interesting upbringing, had the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And some would say the best and the worst of both worlds, but I had exposure to both worlds. That's the Canadian Western lifestyle and the Middle Eastern Muslim, growing up in a Muslim majority country lifestyle.
Okay.
When I went back to Canada for university, around that time I was very into stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I loved watching stand-up comedy, Gabriel Iglesias, Russell Peters. You know, there's a lot of good comedians out there, and I just really started loving comedy throughout high school and university.
Yeah.
And then when I went to university, I realized you start becoming a lot more aware of your surroundings, and I realized all the political environment. Back then, Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister of Canada, and he was from the Conservative Party, and he loved to use the word Islamicism a lot.
Which doesn't really hold any real meaning.
Which doesn't hold real meaning, but it invokes emotion. It invokes fear. When someone hears Islamicism and Muslims, and people just freak out and they vote for you so you can stop these crazy Muslims.
Yeah.
So
Muslims,
that's right. I'm sorry, Muslims.
Yeah.
And the pronunciation that is correct. I apologize. You got to pronounce it the right way if you want to invoke the right fear.
Yes, sir.
And around that time, I started having a little more political awareness. And I was like, well, there's a lot of misconceptions. At university, people would ask me questions. I'm like, why would you even have that question on your mind? Like, what a weird question to ask someone you just met this semester.
Okay, yeah.
And then I realized, I need to be educated on a lot of these topics, because as a Muslim, other Muslims wouldn't ask you these questions typically. But then a non-Muslim living in Canada who watches the news and consumes the news starts having questions that you might not be prepared for, or you always knew the answer but you didn't know how to articulate it in a way to a non-Muslim audience. Yeah. Or even worse, someone who's Islamophobic and comes with already,
presumptions and everything.
These presumptions, exactly. And around that time, I was watching, I don't know if you've heard of The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Before Trevor Noah, it was The Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I've looked at old recordings of it.
Yeah, they were on a different level.
The good old days, or like Trevor Noah's better? Or what do you think?
Jon Stewart, there's no replacement to Jon Stewart.
Okay,
that's what I'll
so
say.
like...
Trevor Noah did a good job, but Jon Stewart is the OG.
Okay.
And there was also the Colbert Report with Stephen Colbert.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
And the way he did parodies and his satire, it was amazing. And I realized, wait, they took something as boring as politics.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it funny. And the audience can't get enough of it. The audience wants more.
Yeah.
These are topics that you normally would see on the 7th page or 3rd page of a newspaper, and you wouldn't even care. But then when it's displayed in such an entertaining manner, suddenly you're involved. You want more. You want to understand this. You want to hear more. So I said, why can't I do that with Islam? Why not take sensitive topics, taboo topics that people either want to steer clear from, or they don't necessarily want to talk about?
That's pretty much all of Islam now. It's pretty much taboo.
Pretty much.
Thing, right? So
why not take that, sprinkle some comedy, make it entertaining, make it educational, and people will be willing to watch it.
Yeah. And
one thing that stuck with me was one of the imams during the Friday sermon in Canada. He said, and his name is, I can say his name, he's a well-known imam in Canada, his name is Imam Zia Khan.
Okay.
And he's the imam at the Center for Islamic Development in Halifax, where I went to university. And he said, especially growing up brown and Middle Eastern, whatnot, and South Asian, we're told, you need to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, this, dentist, because these are the jobs. Accounting's actually not on the list.
No.
No, because if you're an Arab, you're one out of three things. You're a doctor, engineer, disappointment.
Okay.
And accounting didn't make it to the list. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, in Pakistan, it's different. Accountant, doctor, engineer. Those are like.
Okay, accountant is first. Huh?
Oh yeah.
See, mashallah.
I mean,
okay.
doctor's probably first, to be honest.
True. But accounting made it to the list.
Yeah, it made it to the list just because of how many people this.
Fair, and there's always a job guaranteed for you. Fair enough. So his point was like, study, do what you need, but if you have a passion, if you have a skill set, if you have a talent, use it, nurture it, improve on it, develop it for Islam. And that's something that stuck with me.
Yeah.
So he said, if you love writing books, write a book educating people about Islam in your own style or whatnot, but use that skill. If you write articles, do that. If you're good at video editing, do that. If you're good at poetry, write a poem or a spoken word. If you're good at acting or whatever it is, why not use that passion, use that talent, develop it, hone it, and use it for Islam. That sparked that idea in my mind. I said, I like talking about politics, more or less. Islam, I'm a Muslim, and I love talking about educating people about Islam, especially when everyone's bombarding you with these taboo questions and difficult questions and misconceptions.
Yeah.
And I love comedy. And I think I'm talented in some way, shape, or form.
That was the inception of that Muslim guy.
That was when it was brewing in my mind.
Okay.
And immediately, 4 years later, I took action.
Immediately, right? Very immediate. I mean, in the grand scheme of human history, that is immediately, right?
You know what I mean? I was in university. I was like, you know what? When I graduate, I'll do it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to edit a video, so whatever.
Yeah.
And I just want to pass and get my accounting degree and get my master's and do whatever.
100%.
And eventually graduated and then started doing my CPA. And I was like, you know what? Now or never. And subhanAllah. And then that's where that Muslim guy started.